Yeah, okay, perfect.
Sorry, I was on another screen. Yep, I can hear you perfectly, and you guys can hear me, I think.
We can, thank you. Good afternoon. I will now call this meeting to order of Special Council on November 22nd, 2022. I will start by reading the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as their traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Approval of the agenda. I'll first ask, are there any additions to the agenda today? That the regular order of business be amended to host closed session discussions as agenda item 5 prior to council orientation, and that the agenda be approved as amended. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Winters. All in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? If any arise during the meeting, you can declare at that time. We will now move into closed session. Recommendation is that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs move into closed session at 12:28 p.m. in the council chambers with the CAO, Director of Corporate Services / clerk, and acting clerk remaining in the room for the purpose of educating or training the members council orientation. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Pringle and Councillor Day. All in favor? Carried.
Good afternoon, Ron Thompson. Hey.
Hey, Brian, we're ready to move back into open session. If you can please enable the live stream.
That I'll read the recommendation coming out of closed session that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs moved. I'm on the wrong one, aren't I? Council moved into closed session to host an education session under Section 239, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of said discussions, the following actions were taken. 5.1, Council received training as part of the Township's Council Orientation Program. I will now turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you very much, Mayor Carlton. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the team who is here with us in council chambers. Well, I get to be one of the presenters. All of the information that you have before you in terms of your council handbook, your binders, your calendar, all of those things, I can't take any credit for. So Haley Thompson, Shannon Campbell, Brittany Drury, and Carly Craig have to be acknowledged for all the work they've put into your council orientation session. We now will continue with council orientation, and we've got three main areas to cover over the next little bit this afternoon. I'm going to focus on the interrelation between the council role and staff role. We're going to talk a little bit about community and media relations, and then Brittany Drury will bring it home with the nuts and bolts of council meetings, committee meetings. So, we'll begin there. You want to throw up the presentation card? So council, we often talk about, next slide, please, Carly. We often talk about the role of council in one hand and the role of staff in the other hand, I want to just talk to you a little bit about the interrelation between the two roles. So building that strong partnership between council as the governance body and staff as the administrative and management body is key for us to be able to effectively serve our community. If we understand each other's role and accept each other's role and respect each other in our roles, I think that's when we'll provide the most effective service to our community. And what I'll tell you is there's enough to do in the governance role and more than enough to do in the administrative role that I don't think we need to jockey for each other's positions. So, next slide, please, Carly. So council, we know that you're in a representative role. You are our decision makers. You amend or set our policies. You make the decisions and you give direction and you provide political leadership. What I would say is, in terms of your representative role, there are many views, many opinions, many perspectives out there, and it is challenging to try and represent all of those opinions, all of those perspectives, and particularly when we get into situations where they might be contrary, or there might be conflicting positions or perspectives on things. Your election to office really requires you to understand a broad range of issues, broad range of perspectives. And that's where, for me, I see staff being very supportive of you as council members. You can't know everything. You can't be experts in everything. So, that's where I hope you feel you can rely on us to be your subject matter professionals. The policies that you set for us or amend, they help provide structure and they help provide a framework for us to provide service to our community. We know this in our minds, that decisions are not always popular, but it does get challenging when we get into those sticky situations or those issues where there are really polarized positions. It is difficult sometimes to make the decision and make the decision for the betterment of the community when there's so much pushback. We recognize that. Next slide, please, Carly. As your staff, our role is to provide you with advice, provide you support, make recommendations to you, and that is to council as a collective whole, and sometimes individually to council members, particularly on procedural matters. Our job is also to establish administrative policies and practices and procedures to make sure that we can implement the decisions of council. Our job is to implement those decisions of council in keeping with legislation and the township's policies and procedures. My job in particular, in working with the rest of the staff, is to organize the resources that you have given us to provide the service to the community. So whether it's equipment, it's finances, it's people, that's our job. It is really key for us to work almost as partners in providing that service to our community. Some of us in our roles, you appoint by bylaw, particularly the fire chief, the chief building official, the clerk, the treasurer, and myself. So you appoint us by bylaw, and we're bound by some pretty particular framework to our positions. Next slide, please. Council, I'd like to talk to you about the principle of joint stewardship. I mean, I think sometimes staff are viewed as just doing a job. I'll tell you that we're working with our staff to see our positions as much more than just a job. It is service to our community. You've been elected to be our leaders in that providing the best service to our community. So I see it as a joint stewardship role. And although our roles are very distinct, we can't do our jobs without each other. There's an interrelation between those roles. If we can do our jobs together with mutual respect, trusting each other, we can demonstrate to our community the accountability and the transparency that they're looking for. We can demonstrate leadership, that we're making decisions for the right reasons, based on fact, based on expert advice, and using good judgment, and for the betterment of the entire community. We need to work together to maintain confidentiality where information is protected by law. We also need to work together to enhance the public's understanding of our political process. It is a unique animal, and explain the decisions. And we need to do that collectively. We're not always going to agree. You may not agree with the recommendations of staff, and that's fine. And I'll help explain that to staff. There may be reasons and rationale where you don't agree with the recommendations that staff are bringing forward. You may not agree with each other, but once council collectively has made a decision, we are all going to support it, and we as staff are going to implement the decision of council. And the thing that will cause challenge in our community is if we're not all speaking positively about the decision of council, and whether that's on the staff side of the table or on the council side of the table. So we need to work together. So that's our roles, interrelated council. Now, if we look forward facing to our community, communication is going to be key, and effective communication is key for us to serve our community well. And I don't know, this is my third municipality. I don't know of a municipality who has perfected everything related to communications, but boy, we're going to try. And, you know, you're going to be challenged, council, with a lot of information coming at you, whether it's questions, it's feedback, it's people's opinions, perspectives. They're going to give you concerns. We're going to throw research at you. We're going to make recommendations, provide advice. And what I would encourage is that you consider all of that when you're making decisions related to policy or the services that you want to see. You consider the community as a whole, not just the vocal folks, not just special interest groups, but the community as a whole. And that you help, and we will help as well, explain those decisions to residents. We owe it to them to explain our decisions. So we have been working on streamlining some communications this year. And again, I'm not going to take any credit for this. It is the team that has been working on this, and some beyond this team. If we're talking about matters of business that have come before council previously or are coming before council in the near term, if you get questions, you have questions yourself, please direct them to myself or direct them to the appropriate department head. We will get the answers to your questions or citizens' questions, and those answers will go back to all of council. We want to make sure that everybody's working with the same information. If there are matters of regular service, here's the new thing we've been working on. We have a contact GB area on our website that brings up a form. people can fill in some basic information, and we use this form-based software to track, triage, and respond to the questions and concerns that come in. Sometimes there's compliments. The reason that we're doing this and the benefit that we're seeing is we're seeing a reduction in calls that are going to staff that actually should be delivering service rather than answering phone calls. It's streamlined the information process going to the appropriate staff. Sometimes I can be the biggest roadblock to something getting to the right person. Residents can actually put in some contact information and receive updates or notice of resolution to whatever their inquiry was. And then we have data. And internally, we look at the data on a fairly regular basis, and that can help us determine whether we have to realign or align something differently. It also helps us when we come and talk to council about a particular service area and how many requests, inquiries, concerns we've had. This system's been in place, help me out, for about 6 months, 4 months. Oh, we went live a year ago, sorry. So we have some data that has really helped us throughout this year, making some decisions and realigning some resources. Now, that doesn't leave out the people who don't have access to a website. We still have our customer service number. We still have our number that they can call after hours, and it gets sent to an emergency number for triaging. But this has really helped us be much more effective in tracking, not losing sight of those concerns that come in, because they were coming in many different ways. Last slide. In summary, council, the relationship between council and staff, if we do it properly, we have a unique opportunity to build and maintain community confidence and build trust within our community. If we have mutual respect for each other, we trust each other to do our jobs, we work together, we act and make decisions based on fact, not rumor, we could be successful in serving our community over the next 4 years. We have many large initiatives to tackle, opportunities to explore. Council, I believe if we work in partnership under that principle of joint stewardship, we can accomplish some great things for our community. And that really sums up my presentation on the interrelation between your role as representatives in our governance body and our role as the administrators and management of service. And I'm happy to entertain questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? You go ahead.
Thanks, CEO Fletcher there. That was a good presentation. One thing that I did want to kind of bring to light or bring to attention to, and you hit on all the points that I've been thinking about since I had my opportunity here to wait for council to get back in, and where we had our disconnect in the last 4 years of moving the process forward and that lack of trust and nobody having the or feeling like they had the competence in the staff to do the position. I've never felt that way. I've always entrusted the staff members to do their job to their best capability on the information that we've given to work with. Truly for the fact that I have a full-time job and I have other things to worry about. So when we task you with something to do, I expect that that's what's going to happen. You're going to do the best you can. And I really believe that's the direction we have to go. We can't be undermining one another's authorities in the jobs that we have to do. We are a council. We have an opportunity here to move this township forward, but we can't undermine the people that are working for us. As I sit here today, we got some young faces in here that, we haven't seen since the 4 years I was here, right? So again, seeing new faces again in 4 years, I don't know how many people I've seen different. So there's a reason for that. And we got to get back to the way it's supposed to be run, that we let staff do their job. People in the township do their job. We take the town or the concerns of the community to us and we fix it from there. And again, I think we really truly got to get to that point. And I really hope that moving forward, if there's interference being run by anybody or a conflict happening somewhere along the line, that we know right away, because it's going to stop. Because that to me was our biggest downfall in the last 2 years of council. We were too busy arguing about or wondering what was going on or listening to the rumors or hearing the stories, and we weren't getting anything accomplished. And it was just, we're sitting there spinning our wheels. So I really hope that if there is a problem that lies out there that comes real quick to us, that we can end it, because it has to end. If we're going to move forward, we have to be a team.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Coburn, I see your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I'm looking for the way to lower my hand. I don't know if I did that. Anyway, yeah, so just a comment and a question for Cynthia or Brittany. I mean, it's not that I disagree with our deputy mayor. I think the large part of where sometimes we got stalled over the past 4 years was because we didn't have consistent leadership at the staff level. And so that does leave you vulnerable to, overstepping or sometimes not being able to trust in the work that's being done to the extent that we could have had we had a consistent senior management and CAO. So I believe that was the cause of a lot of our issues over the last 4 years. I don't think that's going to be a problem going forward. So my question, Cynthia, if I may, and it's a quick and easy one. In your presentation, you referred to a form that I think is Contact GB. Is that the same as the report a concern form, or do we have a new one now? Because I feel like I'm not familiar with the name of that one that you've referenced.
No, and through Mayor Carlton, thank you for the question. I had asked the team to think about rebranding report a concern, because it's not just intended for concerns. It's intended for the system to be a means for any of our residents or council members to contact us at the township. So, like I say, we've actually had some compliments through the system. So it's more of a rebranding. Just, Mayor Carlton, if I may, I did neglect to mention that council, well, my presentation was fairly brief. Council has approved a council staff relationship policy, which is included in the list of policies in your handbook. So if you want more information, the policy outlines the roles pretty well.
Thank you. I would just like to comment on the Contact GB. I had occasion to use that on the weekend just to report some of the complaints I was getting about roads and such. It seemed the easier way to let staff know about it. And you get a 6-digit number back as a record of that having been input into the system. And it's a kind of a quick and easy way to give a whole lot of details in that comment section that gives staff the background behind what you're letting them know about. So I would encourage everybody to use it because it is really good. Are there any comments from anyone else on council? So a couple of things that I have. When I have received concerns from residents, you'll note that I'm forwarding it to staff and I'm copying all of you on council. I would ask that everyone do that going forward. It allows us to not inundate staff with 7 different requests on the same thing and allows everybody to be kept in the loop going forward. I would also suggest that when you get your agenda package and read those, if you have questions of staff, go ahead and send that question to staff at that time. But then at the council meeting, bring up that question there as well. Because even though you have an answer, The public doesn't yet. And that's a good way of getting that information out to the public as well, so that they then hear what the background is and they get more of the decision making thinking that's going behind the scenes, maybe in our minds, that we may not express well. So ask staff the questions, but then bring the same thing forward at a council meeting. So that's all I have to say there. If there's anything else, or if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next part.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, I'm going to ask Haley Thompson to cover just the next couple of slides related to communication and media relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here today. As Cynthia mentioned, this is just a couple of slides. It's going to be real quick, and then we'll get more, deeper into the communications and media relations stuff, I think, further into 2023. But essentially, the communications that we put out to the community help us build trust. They help us keep them informed on the services that we offer at the township. They help us share news and updates with the community as well. And it's really important that that information is consistent, it's accurate, it's timely. Our staff have reviewed it, so we know that it's correct and that they're aware that it's going out. We do this proactively. We send out media releases, which I know you've been receiving already. Our intention is to circulate them to members of council and senior management before they go out to the community, sort of as far ahead as we can, so that, once that kind of hits the newsstands, if members of the public are contacting you right away with questions, you've had a bit of a chance to see and digest and know that information was coming out. And then we do also get inquiries from members of the media as well. And so when members of the local media get in touch with us about a certain topic, we want to make sure that we're identifying the right spokesperson to answer their questions and to provide any further information. And we also want to track that media coverage. We want to know what those conversations are that are happening out in the community, so that we know if there's any gaps we need to fill, any information we need to correct, or the topics that are of interest that we can help educate the public about. Next slide. And so we do ask because, especially in small towns, our elected officials and senior managers tend to be pretty easy for media to track down. So they might get in touch with you and want to talk to you about certain topics. And so if that does happen, we ask that you get in touch with me so that we can identify who the right spokesperson is for that topic, if we need to pull up any background information or key messages to assist them in answering those questions, and just make sure that all of the messaging, again, is just really consistent and correct for the community. Generally, the mayor is the official spokesperson for council, particularly for decisions that are made at the council table. But in some cases, it might be more appropriate for, the chair of a certain committee, or for more operational requests, maybe for a member of staff to respond to those inquiries and take that on as well. So again, that's just another reason where if a member of the media gets in touch and has an interest in a topic, make sure that I'm aware as the communication specialist, so we can direct them to the right place and then follow up and track and see what they come up with once it gets published. And I'd like to talk a little bit about social media as well. I know a lot of you use that during your campaigns, and I know a lot of you have already been sharing our posts and commenting on our township pages as well, which is amazing. Absolutely, please keep doing that. Help get our messages out there and help build that social media community. Social media is, a major part of the communication landscape now. It's a great way for us to get information out really, really quickly and at no cost to our audience, to our residents who want to be kept informed. So we would love to keep growing that community. We just recommend that you keep in mind that anything you do on social media is in public. Even if you think you've got privacy settings really locked down, essentially, things can always be found. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So be mindful of what you post on social media. Keep in mind that you're in the public eye and that your code of conduct as a member of council applies as much there as it would in this room or at a community event or, out in the community. And yeah, so I think we'll get further into that in the new year, but I will take questions as well if anyone's got any.
Any questions from council? I do have a comment to make, and you've touched on this, Haley. So generally, the mayor acts as the official spokesperson for the council and the municipality. That does not preclude others from speaking as well. But yes, I would encourage everyone to go through Haley, and let's make sure that the message we're giving is a unified one. It's the one that we want going out to the public. Another comment I have, and I had a question asked of me this morning about garbage pickup, and we just had the media release going out that some areas got missed yesterday. So I know a long time ago, I signed up on the website to get those email blasts out, and I know I got one about that recently. That's still available for people to sign up for, because that's what I suggested to this resident, that she sign up and then she would get those email blasts. So it would be something for everybody else. If you're getting questions like that, that information is going out to the public from communications. If people just sign up online for those email blasts, then they'll be kept up to date on everything as well. So any further comments by anyone?
I will just confirm that Mayor Carlton, absolutely. The sign up form is still available on our website. We actually just upgraded the news feed to the latest version. So they're easier to post and really easy to sign up. And every time a news release gets posted, it will get emailed directly to those residents, as it will also get posted to the homepage on the website, sent to our local media, and posted on our social media pages as well.
Excellent. So we have new ways of getting that information out there, because we used to put it in the newspaper and on the radio, but people don't read the newspaper anymore and they don't listen to the local radio stations all the time. So new ways to communicate. So are we moving on to the next section now?
We are. If there are no further questions, then Brittany will cover her nuts and bolts section.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so let's move on then.
Okay, I'm up next with undoubtedly the most riveting presentation you have yet to hear today, being your meeting procedures, the procedural bylaw, and how we can effectively run council and committee meetings and everything that comes in between the two. So with that being said, I am Brittany Drury. I am your clerk. With that being said, will be on mat leave and effective a couple weeks. So beside me here is your new acting clerk, Carly Craig. She will be taking over the clerk portfolio when I leave to meet Baby Bean. So first, to kick us off, I want to first say the way you will access your agendas is through an application called eScribe. eScribe speaks directly with eSolutions, which is our website provider. So everything that we put on eScribe, that we tell eScribe to publish, then becomes public information, which is how the public sees your agenda packages on a weekly basis. Agendas are published on Fridays. You will receive them on Fridays, thereby giving you the weekend and the first few days of every week to review your agenda materials for the coming Wednesday council or committee of the whole meeting. And all of those meetings will commence at 5 o'clock, with the exception of special council meetings. Now, I know that all of you have received your iPads. All of them are preloaded with your eScribe applications. If you have any questions or you need help resetting your passwords, come to us. We can help you with that. Okay. So a couple small points just to get us started. You'll hear me use the words quorum and majority a few times throughout these upcoming slides. So what I mean by that must first be addressed by how many people we have sitting on our council. So the Township of Georgian Bluffs hosts a 7-member council made up of 5 councillors with a deputy mayor and a mayor. Now, a quorum of that simply means majority. So 4 out of the 7. So for a motion to carry or for a decision to be enacted, 4 out of the 7 members have to vote in favor of it. And further to that, as we've seen in our election cycle, you are all elected at large, meaning you do not represent a singular ward, you represent the township as a whole. Okay? So the procedure bylaw, the kind of guiding document that is very long and sometimes can put you to sleep if you need to. So pull it out at nighttime if you're ever looking for a resource. We, being the clerks, are here to guide you through this long document and help you run meetings effectively. Procedure bylaws are a requirement under the Municipal Act. That is a piece of legislation that you'll seek and review often throughout your appointment as an elected official. So rule number 1, you have to have a procedure bylaw to govern your meetings, being committees, council. You can elect to have a separate procedure bylaw for all of those things. I would never recommend you do so. So our one procedure bylaw governs everybody. So everybody follows the same rules. Okay. The Municipal Act further defines closed meeting exemptions. So as a rule, all of your meetings are open to the public. There are very limited exemptions to not host that meeting in the public forum because of transparency and open governance rules. Now, there are 11 exemptions that permit you to host a closed session meeting. They are very prescriptive, not a lot of room for gray when it comes to closed sessions. So by default, it will always be our recommendation that we host as many open meetings as we possibly can. If you host a closed session meeting that does not fall within one of those 11 exemptions, it's deemed an illegal closed meeting and thereby subject to investigation by the Ontario Ombudsman's Office. Okay, so we have to be very mindful about what we're moving into closed session to discuss. And further, when we're in closed session, we're only discussing what we went into closed session to discuss. Now, all of these things that I'm reviewing are detailed in your procedure bylaw. That's why it's so long and sometimes why it's so boring. So the procedure bylaw also defines your roles as both counselors and the chair. So the chair is your mayor or any other appointed chair on any other committee. The committees will select chairs and vice chairs at their first meeting of every term, and that will carry forward throughout the remainder of the appointment of that committee. You'll have to excuse me, the baby sitting on my lungs. So as indicated here, the chair is essentially the leader of the meeting. They are the facilitator. They are the caller of comments, caller of votes, etc. The chair's role is different from that of a member's role, but you're all held to the same standards, being all votes are equal. The chair is the tiebreaker. But all of you are held to the same meeting standards, being parliamentary procedure, using parliamentary language, respecting your colleagues, and allowing everyone to speak in an open and respectful way. So, how do we facilitate that discussion? That's mainly done through motions. Motions are governed by Robert's Rules of Order, which is just another really, really long procedure bylaw. So where our procedure bylaw doesn't cover a subject, we automatically default to Robert's Rules of Order. And Robert says any discussion that needs to be discussed or held at a council or committee meeting must first be presented by a motion. So motions take 3 forms. We move through 3 separate steps as we go through the discussion portion of each meeting. So first, a motion is a recommendation. That's step 1. So you'll see staff reports on your agendas that include a recommendation box. The recommendation is then what opens the discussion, i.e. becomes the motion. So once a recommendation is moved and seconded, it's then opened for discussion. That's when it becomes a motion. So the motion dictates the action council wishes to take and the steps in which we must take to get there. So once the motion is on the floor, the chair will open the discussion and allow anyone to request to speak to the item by raising your hand. Everyone has the opportunity to speak. You just have to indicate your request to do so. And the mayor or the chair will call upon you in the order of which you've raised your hands to speak. Following everyone having their opportunity to speak, the chair will then lend her comments or his comments if we're in a committee meeting, at which point she, being the chair, will then call the vote. That's the point at which it becomes a resolution. So that's step 3. Resolutions can only be made by council. And once it's a resolution, it means it's done. We're done discussing it. The action is to be implemented, and that's how you give direction to us. We then take the actions you resolved upon in that resolution, and we make your policies. We enact all of the actions that you have approved here in this open forum. Okay. Now, I will say that committee of the whole cannot make resolutions. So for our newer counselors, you will see committee of the whole minutes appear on the next council meeting agenda for final ratification through their minutes. Now, you have the opportunity to pull any of those resolutions or recommendations upon which time those committee meeting minutes are being considered by council. Okay, so that was a very fast way to introduce you to the world of motions. And one last point, it's procedurally most appropriate that if you have a discussion item that you wish to bring forward, that you do so by notice of motion. So in this process, you will provide notice at a council or committee meeting under the appropriate agenda item, indicating the discussion you wish to have, the general nature of that discussion, and then we will work together to create your motion for the subsequent council meeting. That increases transparency to the public by allowing them to have notice of all council discussions and potentially an action item that may come out of your notice of motion. Okay. Alrighty. So some of this will be duplicated further to the conversation we had earlier today, the declarations of pecuniary interest. I'm going to go over it very briefly, and considering we've had substantial conversation surrounding this already, but essentially as a public official, you are bound to the responsibilities delegated to you within the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, meaning you are required to declare any direct or indirect or deemed blah, 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 conflict of interest, specifically those in relation to a pecuniary interest. As we all now know, pecuniary means financial. So again, doesn't matter if it's a positive or a negative impact. If it's a financial impact, you must declare so. You must declare so at the appropriate time in the meeting, being the beginning. You must then submit the required form to either Carly or I's attention for publication on the township website. That declaration is public, and as we now know, is a requirement of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. If you require advice on whether or not you have an interest, we know that it can be complex, especially within a small township. We're all slightly more interrelated than we would be within a larger township. So there may be more complex relationships between yourselves and other members of your community. So if you need specific advice as to whether or not you have a conflict of interest and whether or not you are required to declare so in an open forum, you may contact our integrity commissioners. They are Principals Integrity. Their contact information is both available on the website and included within your council handbook. That relationship and any advice given to you through the Integrity Commissioner is explicitly between you and the Integrity Commissioner. The same privilege that exists between solicitor-client privilege exists between you and your Integrity Commissioner. They are strictly a resource for you to assist you in ensuring you are meeting your requirements both under the Code of Conduct as well as the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So you have the opportunity to reach out to them as you see fit. Okay? All right, and that brings us in nicely to the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct has been linked in your council handbook and is available for your review. I would encourage you to do so. There's a lot of information, including some of which we'll go over briefly today. But essentially, amendments to the Municipal Act in 2018 required all municipalities to have both a Code of Conduct as well as appoint an Integrity Commissioner. We did both of those things upon amendments of the Municipal Act, and they currently both exist. So as I mentioned, we appointed Principals Integrity both to oversee and provide advice on the Code of Conduct as well as the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So the Code of Conduct outlines principles and values that are applicable to you in your elected role, including maintaining open and accountable governance, upholding confidentiality, that's very important and very explicitly listed within the Code of Conduct. And not only that, but governs gifts and how you may receive them. So all of that information is detailed within that document. Should you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them of us, but as I say, most appropriately through the Integrity Commissioner. There are two ways in which complaints may be submitted in regards to what may be deemed a breach of the Code of Conduct. So any complaint can come from any body that holds an interest, being yourselves, a member of the public, etc. There's an informal process and there's a formal process. The formal process automatically goes to the Integrity Commissioner and will likely lead to an investigation, a formal investigation process. Informal is the process in which complainants can send their complaints to the Clerk's Department for addressing internally amongst our council. So there's two steps. Now, we'll move on to electronic participation. So COVID-19, the only silver lining, if I can have this kind of hot opinion, is it forced us to be progressive. So we took a look at our council meeting procedures and introduced new ways for people to participate. First being the live stream, second being electronic participation. We definitely stumbled a little bit, but we eventually found our way. So now both you as elected officials and members of the public can participate virtually from anywhere that they have connectivity to. There is no rules about how often you participate or how you elect to participate electronically. You can participate by phone, you can participate by video via Microsoft Teams should you wish. All we ask is that you tell us what you're going to be doing so we can make the appropriate arrangements. Because even though we make it look easy, it's not that easy. And we do have a policy that dictates how electronic participation is accommodated, how we may vote, what happens if another emergency is declared, etc. And that is also appended to your council handbook. Did you have a comment? Are you reaching? No? Okay. Okay. That's me. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Brittany. Any questions or comments from council? Other staff? CAO, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. I would just like to reinforce how important it is that you let Carly know moving forward, or Brittany when she's back, how you plan to participate in our meetings. Having an all in-person meeting is fairly easy. Having an all virtual meeting is fairly easy, but having this hybrid version where we have two members who are participating electronically and some of us in council chambers, it is quite challenging and it takes more to set up. So that's the reason that they need a little bit of time in advance to know how you're participating. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree, that's the silver lining in COVID. Without that, we don't have this flexibility. So I think it's fantastic to move forward with councillors who have other interests, other jobs and such. So no, it's been excellent. So thank you, Brittany. And we're moving on. My apologies, sorry. Somebody on screen has a question. Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a question about, I guess procedurally, this is for our clerk, Brittany. I'm just wondering if council members would like an agenda item added to the agenda. How do we go about that? Do we go through our mayor? Do we contact you directly? Or is it best to add agenda items through the notice of motion procedure? Just wondering how that might be most efficient.
Go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. It will always be my recommendation and procedurally most appropriate that if you wish to bring a matter forward, you do so through notice of motion. Not only because it increases the transparency to the public, but it adequately provides the steps and action items that you're looking to achieve out of that discussion. So it gives staff their marching orders right off the bat and saves us from kind of crafting motions on the fly where undoubtedly thoughts or action items are missed. So that would be my recommendation and procedurally most appropriate.
Thank you. I would agree. That keeps a trail and also alerts the residents to the fact that this issue is being brought forward if it's something they want to follow. So thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. We're either doing a great job of this orientation or we've overwhelmed you. And there, I would just comment before we leave orientation and move on to our next agenda item that it is our intention throughout 2023 to sort of feature service areas and do a little bit of orientation around some of the service areas. We didn't want to overwhelm right off the hop. We thought we'd get the basics out of the way today, but there will be more to come. I think I'm going to turn the meeting back to you, Mayor Carlton, to move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. So the next sections I'm seeing here in the book, the service alignment and such, is just for information going on forward there.
Thank you for reminding me that I should talk to you about your binders. So we have provided some additional resource information in addition to your council handbook. We've provided you with a binder that has, I think right now, some expense sheet information. It has a chart that outlines how our services are aligned. And as I mentioned, I think in January, we'll be doing a bit of a session on planning. February, we'll be talking about the budget and finance. And the intention is you can add additional information to your binder as you see fit. Thank you.
And thank you. And to Councillor Thompson and Councillor Coburn, you do have a binder sitting here that has all of this information and all the slide decks from this afternoon in it. So it's here whenever you can get in and get it. So we will move on to number 8, staff reports. Whereas Councillor-elect Mike Smith provided written notice of his resignation from his office on the Township of Georgian Bluffs Council to the clerk on November 14th, 2022, and whereas said written notice fulfilled the resignation requirements defined in Section 260 of the Municipal Act 2001, now therefore, Council hereby approves the following: that Councillor-elect Mike Smith's council office is hereby declared vacant for the purposes of Section 262 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that staff be directed to pursue appointment of the vacant position as described in option 1 of this report. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Winters, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I will open it up for discussion. Actually turned over to Director of Corporate Services, our clerk, to speak to the report first, and then we'll take questions and comments from council.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. So just briefly, I will review the report, and considering this may be the first that any of you have experience with Section 262 of the Municipal Act. So just to briefly outline council's responsibility. As soon as Councillor-elect Mike Smith put his intention to resign from his elected office in writing, that served as notice through the Act to this council and to myself to then commence the vacancy process. Essentially, council has to do 3 things in order to fill the vacancy that we are deeming here today. First, we must publicly declare the office to be vacant, which you will accomplish through the recommendation that the chair has read and has since been tabled. Second, we must elect to either appoint an individual to the vacant vacant position or host a by-election. Both are fine and both are legal ways to move on with the vacant position. Third, and depending on which option you select, we must pass a bylaw to ratify that decision. So whether we appoint an individual to said vacancy or host a by-election, a bylaw is required to ratify either decision. Now, as included in this report, we are recommending that we fill the position based on the recent results out of the 2022 municipal and school board elections. So I've included in the report the official results from said election cycle, in which candidate Isaac Scholdice holds the next highest amount of votes received, being 1,644. So should council opt to continue to fill the vacancy with candidate Scholdice, we can amend the motion today to give that direction, to prepare the bylaw, to bring it back to a meeting in December to have his appointment formally ratified. Now, with that being said, I have had a very brief conversation with candidate Scholdice, and he is very excited to hold the role and still very much interested should council elect to move forward with option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open it up to council for comments. Deputy Mayor Pringle, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Carlton. The only concern, and I have no objection to the process we have in place here to do that. My concern is attendance. I know I get he has a job that's very, very demanding on him right now and stuff like that too. And I appreciate the work that he does. My concern is I want to know, do we have anything in place on attendance? How much attendance you got to be here?
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. So in my discussion with candidate Scholdice, he did mention that being a shift worker, he is tied to schedules approximately 2 months at a time. So due to his unsuccessful election in October, he has already committed to a schedule that's approximately 2 months out, being that will take us to January, middle of January, something like that. But with that being said, he has no issue in committing to the time that he knows that it will take. We may have to be a little bit flexible through to January, but he's even still ready to come to the December meetings, whether it's virtually or in person. So I guess the point is, through our discussion, I was not left with any concerns about his ability to attend council meetings.
Thanks. Yeah, Brittany, that's good. No, the only concern I had was, this position takes time and we need him here. So if he's willing to commit to that, then I'm.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Thompson next.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. I keep trying to touch my touch screen and it's not a touch screen. So I would feel like a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't put this out there. I understand the report, it's well written, and it makes sense given that the election was just so recently held, and we have a message from constituents about the order of election and preference for candidates. Having said that, some of you may know, some of you may not know, I was appointed in this role in 2004 when a seat was vacated and it went through an interview process and an appointment. And so I feel a bit compelled to raise that point, at least for consideration or discussion. I respect that people may not want to go that way, but again, I would feel a bit hypocritical to have achieved the seat in that way and not have put it on the table for discussion. So quickly, some are aware of this, but what happened in that case was the role was declared vacant, and then there was an expression of interest, and there were some unsuccessful candidates included in that process at the time. So I put that out there to see what my colleagues' reaction is.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and I'll go to Councillor Coburn next.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. Yeah, I'm fully in support of option 1 as presented by staff in the report, full stop. I don't think we need to enter into a by-election that will take more time and be costly whenever we can just simply look at the next highest number of votes. So I support that recommendation by staff.
Thank you. Any other comments here in council chambers? If I could comment back on what Councillor Thompson was saying, I think at the time that happened, Ryan, it was a couple of years since the election. So I think there was a time lapse in between. My thought is this close to the election, the residents or the electorate has stated what they would have liked next. So I would suggest we follow that as option 1. That to me makes the most sense. And I agree with Councillor Coburn. The cost of calling a by-election at this point would be ludicrous and way too expensive for council to justify at this point. So I'm just going to ask staff for next steps. Do we amend this motion that's on the floor now to add that we're going to go with option 1, or what do you need us to do?
So through your chair, if it should be the collective will of council to move forward with the appointment process as described in the report, I would simply recommend that we amend the motion to remove the last line and add the additional 2, being that candidate Isaac Scholdice be appointed to the role of councillor on the Township of Georgian Bluffs Council, and that a bylaw to formalize candidate Scholdice's appointment be presented at the next scheduled council meeting.
Thank you. CAO Fletcher, please go ahead.
Through you, I would agree with Ms. Drury. I think my question is the intention to wait until the 14th or to have a special council meeting on the 7th? Would be, oh, it covers both, sorry.
Okay, so do we need the mover and seconder to agree to amending the motion? Or?
So you will need a mover and a seconder for the amendment and then a vote on the amendment.
Okay, so can I have a mover and seconder on the amendment? I see Councillor Coburn, Councillor Day, thank you. And if there's no further discussion, I'll call the vote on that one. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So then we go back to the main motion, and do we ask for further discussion on that, or we're just calling the vote?
You may have further discussion should there be any. Otherwise, you may call a vote.
Is there any further discussion then? I will call the vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Thank you. Time delay on the video screens. Okay, thank you. So we are now on to the confirming bylaw. That bylaw number 2022-068, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on November 22nd, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the date of our next regular meeting will be December 7th at 5 o'clock, and we are adjourning at 2:45. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Thompson? Deputy Mayor Pringle? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And if I could just add just something that's coming up in the village of Shallow Lake on December 9th, I think it's the Friday night, the 9th of December. Shallow Lake's Jingle and Mingle Christmas event is going on starting at 6 o'clock. Santa won't arrive till after 8 o'clock though. Councillor Coburn, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. Sorry, along with your announcement, I wondered if you wanted to just put a quick plug in for nominations for the volunteer award, since that deadline is coming up quickly, I believe.
That would be a good thing. I think that's definitely out on social media and has been posted on all media. So yeah, spread the word, anybody, if you're talking to somebody and you think they should nominate or be nominated. And thank you, everyone.